Welcome to the Video Quin Key, page 2. That's the complete Rules to Quin, part 2, for those who just got the game and are learning how to play. Page 2 is all about the pieces. We're going to get to them in depth, and we're going to start with light. The mission of Quin is to get to center. We call it first sight with your light, or to catch your opponent's light. Light moves 2 spaces per turn, and you only get 1 of them. Most pieces, if they flash their own type, mutually destruct. Light is an exception, able to take other light to win the game. In fact, light takes any piece it flashes with no exceptions. Light doesn't have to be played on the board at the start. You can bring it in mid-game or not at all, however you choose. Artificial light also moves 2 spaces per turn. You get 4 artificial lights, and you can't put these on the board at the start of the game. Artificial light, if it flashes another artificial light, mutually destructs, removing both from the board to the 0G. Otherwise, artificial light captures most any piece it flashes, including voids, without consequence. Reflectors and time are the only 2 exceptions to this. Either one of those, flashed by artificial light, simply reveal and swap places, with the defender moving to the space where the attacker started in that turn. Any other piece flashed by artificial light is captured, removed to 0G, and the artificial light takes the space. When both of your shadows are taken, as we see happening here, artificial light becomes accelerated. For the rest of the game, all of your artificial light can now move up to 5 spaces per turn, making them almost as fast as a shadow and almost as deadly. If you resurrect a shadow, you lose the acceleration, reverting your artificial light to 2 space moves. Let's look at the reflector next. This deceptively humble piece moves 2 spaces per turn and can't capture anything. Each player has 2 reflectors to play with. What a reflector does is facilitates the movement of light and artificial light. On any line, we can move our artificial light or real light to either side of that reflector, no matter how far away it is. Here we have a second reflector on the opposite side of the board, maximizing our maneuverability for that artificial light. We're jumping right over the iris, jumping right over the horizon, or just jumping from one side of the reflector to the other at will. We can jump over any other pieces, opposing pieces, friendly pieces, doesn't matter. Again, we're just staying on a single line. The horizon line works just as well as the sight lines, though it may be a little harder to get set up for. Reflection only works on lines, so we can't reflect into the iris. Here we reflect to ring 1 on the far side. Next move, we take first sight. Remember that reflection does end your turn. Use reflection aggressively. You can land on an opposing piece, the landing space doesn't have to be open, and flash them immediately. Artificial light has one power we left out earlier. That is the power to reinforce in numbers. You can bring in as many artificial light as you like, up to as many as you have on 0G, all in the same turn, provided you have enough open gateways. Here, after using that power, we resurrect a reflector on the far gateway, and suddenly our artificial light is swarming the board. Reflectors can't capture anything, only flashing to reveal and swap places, except with voids and other reflectors, which both result in mutual annihilation. Let's check out those shadows. They are your fastest, most aggressive, most important piece in the early game. Each player gets 2 shadows, and they can each move up to 7 spaces per turn, making them more than 3 times as fast as light. We highly recommend that new players and intermediate alike play both shadows on the board at the start of the game, usually both in forward starting positions. This will be your primary rush defense. Shadows can capture almost anything, but they can't capture other shadows. When 2 shadows flash, they swap places, with the defender moving to the space where the attacker started in that turn. There are no flashbacks in Quin, meaning that a piece that was just flashed can't strike back at the same piece on the next turn. It's helpful to count spaces when flashing opposing shadows, so everything ends up exactly where it belongs. Shadows are aggressive, capturing most anything they flash without consequence. Reflectors, artificial light, peripherals, memory. When a shadow flashes your light, Well, that's how a lot of games end. There are only 2 exceptions to this. Shadows can't take time or voids. With time they swap places, with voids they mutually destruct. Now it's time to check out memory. Like a reflector, memory can move 2 spaces per turn, and it can't capture anything. Even so, memory is often one of the most powerful pieces on the board. That's because of the memory swap, what you see right here. On any turn, memory can trade places with any of your other pieces on the same side of the board, or to or from the horizon. You can only do this twice in any game and only once per turn. You can extend that limit by cloning memory or resurrecting it, but the limit remains at 2 swaps per memory. After you've used both swaps, it's practically useless, except as a scout, because memory can't take anything. Like a reflector, flash a void and mutually destruct, or flash another memory and mutually destruct. A memory swap doesn't end your turn. Always remember to move another piece after your memory swap. Here we see a series of consecutive turns. A shadow rushes forward, memory swap, swap again brings a void forward, then void gravity. Here we go, let's talk about time. Each player gets 1 time piece, and it can move 1 space per turn. Use the power of time to move one of your opponent's pieces back up to 3 spaces along any sightline toward their own gateway. You choose which of their pieces to use the power on. The power can't be used against any piece on the horizon or the iris. It can't be used to push a piece into the horizon or iris. Just straight backward along a sightline up to 3 spaces. You can't use it to push a piece over another. No jumping allowed, so any piece behind it will block the move. You can't use it on that piece on the horizon. Time takes anything it flashes, except for voids or another time, both of which result in mutual destruction. Time has to be on the board to use its power, but can use its power from anywhere, at any time, and using the power of time does not end your turn. Using the power of time removes time from the game to your opponent's 0G card. Let's look at the peripheral next. This piece is exceptionally versatile. The peripheral is the only piece that can move directly to the horizon, and it's the only piece that can change direction on a turn. Peripherals move up to 3 spaces, straight along any sightline or on any ring. Or they can move 1 space on a sightline and 1 space on a ring, resulting in a diagonal movement. From ring 1 at the horizon, that diagonal movement can land it on either space of the iris, or the regular 3 spaces on a ring can send it to any space on ring 1, making this a powerful position for a peripheral. As we see here, these powers combine to give the peripheral unparalleled maneuverability, despite having a moves limit of only 3. Depending on your strategy, the peripheral can play many roles. Designed as a shadow assassin, a great scout, and a support piece to get other pieces to the far side of the horizon. That's what the slingshot is all about, and so let's look at that now. Any of your pieces can jump over your peripheral on the horizon to the first sightline on the opposite side of the board, same ring. This counts as 1 space in a normal legal move. You can't use it to jump over any other pieces. Here you'd count 1, 2 to move that reflector with the peripheral slingshot. Here we use it aggressively with a shadow, moving 5 spaces, landing on the artificial light, and capturing it in the same move. A peripheral slingshot always ends your turn. Peripherals capture shadows. That's the only piece that they capture. Otherwise, they flash like a memory or reflector, revealing, swapping places, mutually destructing with voids or another peripheral. That brings us to the void. Each player has 4 voids in their starting lineup, and each void can move 1 space per turn. Except for light or artificial light, anything that flashes a void mutually destructs with the void, making them great for offensive or defensive minefields, and sending both pieces to 0G. The power of void gravity makes the void both the fastest and slowest piece in the game. Use gravity on any turn to move any of your voids into empty spaces next to another one of your voids. Gravity can pull voids across the horizon or even onto the horizon, so long as they're landing in an open space next to a void that was already there. It's a simple rule with insane implications. Set up voids in far different parts of the field and bring other voids to them instantly. Voids can't move directly to the horizon, but with gravity they can drift across in groups. The iris is a power-free zone, free from void gravity. You can't cast it from the iris, and you can't cast it to land voids on the iris. You can clone your void, entering the game with 5 voids in play. If you lose one, you can resurrect it onto the gateway. At the gateway, there's only one open adjacent space, so it takes 2 moves to bring all your voids over. The void amoeba is a term to describe the incremental movement of large numbers of voids as an unbroken group. Here we see them swinging around each other in all sorts of strange consecutive ways. Remember that each one of these movements would be a complete turn on its own. You can move multiple voids in one void gravity pull, but the void that's calling it needs to remain stationary. Voids capture everything they flash, with the only exception being other voids, resulting in mutual annihilation. While anything that flashes a void, of course, is mutually annihilated, except for light and artificial light, which make great minesweepers. But keep in mind, even in that situation, if 2 voids are next to each other, your artificial light is toast on the next turn. Even so, don't hesitate to do it. Don't let a field of voids terrorize you or keep you from your goals. With calculated sacrifice, it can be well worth it to send other pieces into the fray to get rid of those voids. So the last of the 9 types of Quin pieces is the clone. Before the first turn, you're just going to remove a piece of your choice. Anything but shadows or light. You're going to replace that with one of these 4 more colorful clone faces. The remaining 3 clone faces and the 1 piece that you chose to remove are out of play for the rest of the game. You'll probably want to keep them face down near your 0 gravity card. You can choose to clone time, memory, voids, or an artificial light, giving you another fully functional piece of whatever type you choose, with all of the powers and restrictions of the original type. Clone time for defense, memory for offense. Only clone a void or a 5th artificial light if you're really planning to use it. An unused 5th void on your 0G card doesn't do anybody any good, but a 2nd power of time can cost your opponent multiple moves. Having a 2nd memory can be very powerful as well. If your rival is bringing 2 memories at you, use your out-of-play clone faces to count them on the table in front of you. Now you know the pieces of Quin. Now you're going to alternate moves with your rival until one of you reaches center with your light or captures the other's light. Remember, the powers of memory, time, and resurrection don't end your turn. Anything else that you do, including single reinforcements, does end your turn. The first time you play, consider vision mode. That's what you see here, and it's a great way to learn, but highly competitive in its own right. With everything out in the open, face-up play, you can hold each other accountable and take on the challenge of learning Quin together. The official strategy guide that came with your set is going to detail intermediate vision mode, as well as numerous other optional play modes, rules, and concepts. Beyond that, the strategy guide is going to take you on the deep dive. We're going to explore how all of this fits together, and some of the more advanced ways that you can use it to your advantage, trying to outwit those shadows and get to first sight. Well, that's the video Quin key, the complete rules of Quin. There's only 2 pages. Send us your feedback by taking the player survey at quinthegame.com. Check us out on Facebook, Quin the Game, at Quin the Game on Instagram, Quin Official Worldwide, also Facebook. #WeAreQuinn. Thanks for watching. Happy playing.